Welcome, everybody. This is the SharePoint Patterns and Practices General SharePoint Development Special Interest Group. That's what the SIG means in the slide. Today is August 22nd, and this series we have bi-weekly calls bi-weekly on Thursdays at 7 a.m. Pacific. All of these calls are getting recorded, and they are getting shared through the YouTube SharePoint Developer YouTube channel. Now, today we have a kind of a typical agenda related on the intro. So I will actually cover one slide just to recap some of our objectives from Microsoft side of the house. What are we targeting from the engineering side? What is the big thing, especially for the developer platform side of the house? And then latest on PnP CSOM Core, PnP PowerShell, and Modernization tooling. I think those will be covered by Bert when we go to those slides. Not a massive amount yet adjustments or new stuff on that side, because we're still kind of recovering from the summer vacation. Some of the people in Northern Hemisphere, it has been a summer, and some of the people are still on vacation. So that's the reason why there's not a massive amount of movement in all of these open source projects. But there's really cool visions around how do we make those happen. Now, then we do have 3 different demos today. First, April is going to do a contact and Twitter list view formatting sample. So show column actually view formatting samples, which are really cool, really nice design and really good looking stuff. And then after that, Chris is actually continuing on the column and view formatting. So basically explaining to you what is the steps, first of all, to use any of our existing samples, because it is actually really, really simple, but we want to make sure that that's covered. And second of all, how can you contribute? So if you want to create a sample, if you want to get acknowledged by Microsoft as a contributor in our open source community efforts, this is really the easiest way to do that. And even better, if you want to volunteer do a demo, that's even better. You can actually get a YouTube video, you get a recorded, you will get it promoted by our community channels as well. And then as a last demo today, it's going to be Bert Jansen, so showing some of the work he's been currently working on related on modernization scanner to understand your classic profile and InfoPath usage. InfoPath is going to go away. Classic workflow is going to go away, especially in SharePoint Online case. Well, obviously, if you're using SharePoint 2013, you can still use the workflow over there. But in SharePoint Online, both of those capabilities are going to go away. And the number one question for all of our enterprise customers is that, well, are my customers using that? And that's actually quite important thing as a step number 1 to analyze what is the requirements, what is the usage of these capabilities before you start analyzing how do you change them or how do you transform them. And that's what the tooling, what Bert has done, will help you to do. If you're a consultant, you can use this tool to make the analyzing easier for your customer. If you are a customer and you have access on your own tenant, you can absolutely run the tool as well and get a glance on the usage of InfoPath and Classic Workflow. Really cool stuff as well. So good stuff to get covered in the video as well. Now, we have always the slide in a few different formats in our community calls. There's a few different ways of contributing in the SharePoint or Microsoft 365 experiences community. And number 1 option is demo a solution or a technical pattern. So as an example, today, April is demoing his contribution on the view formatting samples. Chris has a recurrent place in these calls to explain column formatting and view formatting in the context of war horses, which, by the way, sounds really weird if you haven't seen his demos, but most likely he'll explain that later today. And then you can always contribute in GitHub. And we do know that contributing in GitHub can be quite a difficult challenge because if you're not familiar with GitHub, that might be the number 1 burden or number 1 challenge that you want to contribute, but you don't actually know how to use GitHub. And that's something what we're working on, try to make it more easier, give you new guidance, step-by-step guidance, step-by-step videos. Hugo Bernier had an awesome blog post pretty recently related on how do you contribute and how to start using GitHub in the context of these samples. Thank you, Hugo, for that one. And then the most importantly, provide feedback. We actually actively in Microsoft Engineering are looking user voice. That's one side of the feedback. We have multiple other community channels like these calls. If you're complaining, if you find something with a say problem, please tell us in the chat window. And it might be that some other people in the community can help you, or if it's an in the product problem, we can help you. But the key point is for us to know about it, so we're able to help you. So really, really important. Now, a few recap on some assets. SharePoint DevDocs, AKMSSP DevDocs. We want to update these and keep them updates. If there's any issues, please let us know. And we're working on quite significant updates on that side as well. SharePoint Dev Videos, we have now 11,500 subscribers in this channel. We have all the time new videos available. So all of these demos are getting recorded. All of the community calls are getting recorded. There's guidance videos, all of those videos available from that YouTube channel. And then SharePoint Dev Issues. If you run into a SharePoint developer issue, don't send me an email or Bert an email. Go to the SP DevDocs issue list, add an issue there, and there's multiple reasons for why we're asking you to do this. Number one reason, if somebody else is running into that issue, they will know that actually Microsoft is aware of this issue already because you have shared your finding, and then the other ones can actually further enhance the message. Number two reason is that all of those issues in the issue list are getting replicated to our internal system. So our own engineering has multiple people responsible of following up and looking into those issues in this issue list. So you will get the fastest way of getting help is by adding an issue there and then keep on repeating and keep on asking the status and updates on the things. Obviously, if it's not a critical thing, it might take a while for us to jump into that one. But if it's a critical thing, we typically jump on these things quite fast. Now, before we go to the updates on the open source projects, I wanted to quickly recap kind of the big areas where we are investing from the Microsoft side of the house. So for us in OneDrive and SharePoint Engineering, which is a combined engineering organization, what are the things where we will be investing heavily during autumn 2019? What is the main areas where you will see further enhancements and the things where we're betting in our side of the house? And the number one thing, modern portals. This is clearly something where we are betting all the time new capabilities. We're releasing new capabilities. If you're following up on SharePoint account in Twitter or our blog posts, the dev one or the non-dev one, you can see that we're quite a lot of investing time and resources on the modern portals. And that's evolving really, really nicely. It is getting to the stage where it definitely doesn't make any sense to use classic publishing, which we do not recommend you to do. Rather use the modern capabilities, the modern communication sites and the hub sites and all of those to make these things happen. The second thing where we are heavily investing is the Better Together story with Microsoft Teams, SharePoint, and OneDrive. So behind of every single Microsoft Teams team is actually a SharePoint site. Now, do you see the site or not? That's a debatable thing. If you only work in the Teams, you might not actually realize that there's a SharePoint site behind of the scenes, but that's actually the fundamental layer as part of every single Microsoft Teams channel. And we're improving this integration and these options all the time because it is definitely an investment area in the Microsoft. The number three is the Microsoft Graph API coverage and usage improvements. So we want to make sure that people can easily access Microsoft Graph and they can easily use the capabilities which are available there. We're improving also the API coverage in the Microsoft Graph side of the house as we're able to make things happen over there. Number four, Microsoft Flow and Power Apps integration improvements. So just to clarify this one, for those who are coming from on-premises towards the cloud, Microsoft Flow and Power Apps are not part of the SharePoint, just to be super clear on those. It's two completely different applications, two completely different services, but they're part of the Office 365. And you're able to use the one identity to sign in, and you're able to access these services, and then you're able to use those services in the context of SharePoint. And SharePoint is being one of the services we're able to integrate by using Microsoft Flow and Power Apps. Now, SharePoint is by far the most widely using Flow and Power Apps, so the usage in the context of SharePoint is by far the most for these services. And we keep on investing heavily on this area, so we make sure that the integration gets better and better. You're able to make cool stuff. Now, if you are a Power, if you're a Power Apps person, and if you're kind of wondering on is the SharePoint people then writing anything on the Power Apps, actual Power Apps, the code and all of that stuff, the answer is no. That's a separate group of people who actually own the development experience complete in Power Apps or the creation experience in the Microsoft Flow. But we have people who are thinking through what is the integration part between the Flow and Power Apps to SharePoint, which is definitely the fundamental piece in the bigger puzzle of Office 365. And then as a final one, definitely not the least one and the smallest one, further extend SharePoint Framework usage as the de facto UX dev model for 365. So SharePoint Framework is by far the most widely used extensibility model in Office 365. And we are looking into further extending that and introducing new integration options, extensions, widget options in other services as well. So back in June, was it June? May was built, Microsoft Build was in May. We already showed and previewed Office add-ins built with SharePoint Framework. We already, right now, you can create Microsoft Teams tabs, tab applications using SharePoint Framework. So the framework will be renamed or integrated to a bigger piece later this autumn. There will be an announcement coming up later. But it is really, really, really important that if you are a SharePoint developer and you want to keep on doing extensibility on the Microsoft 365 or Office 365 level, have a look on SharePoint Framework. We have plenty of tutorials, guidance, free trainings, hands-on labs, demos, and if something is missing, let us know. We will help you to make that journey and transition to happen. Good. That was me for a quick Microsoft engineering update. And I wanted to repeat the message related on what are the key areas where we're investing, probably throughout the year. Throughout the year means by end of June, because Microsoft years start from July and they end on June, which is kind of weird, but that's how our fiscal years are getting structured. So right now we're already in the fiscal year 20 due to that reason. Anyway, and David's comment actually on the order, this is definitely not the priority order necessarily. That's debatable, but everybody, I just want to make sure that all of the 5 items are getting enough visibility on these things. Good. Let's go to the PMP CSOM Core and think, Bert, you're going to do a quick summary on this side. What has happened since the last community call?
Well, yeah, I think quick is the right word here.
Yes. But
because as you mentioned in the introduction,
vacation. Exactly.
I came for vacation. Paula Urban had vacation. Several people had vacation. So not really that much happened. There's like one small fix in there for async webhook. So when you use our provisioning engine, we have an option to have a call out. Like if the lists are provisioned, you can get notified by us. Like you can have a web service, we call your web service and kind of tell you like, hey, the lists are kind of provisioned, so you can potentially plug in logic. Now that one had a flaw with async, which is fixed now. But besides that, it's mainly nothing. But the good thing is there is lots of things to come as well then, because there's a ton of PRs waiting for us to assign, review, and merge. Really, I think about 30 ones that we have to look into. So we'll try to get most of them processed before the September release, but no guarantee everything will get in. But we'll try to do our best to get most of them done. In general, team, there is especially things around data export that we are working on that hopefully will get in by then. Yeah, I think that's it, Vesta. Can you move to PowerShell, which is a bit of a similar story. Like PnP PowerShell is tied to PnP CSOM Core for most of its logic, and since again, people on vacation here, not that much happened. Mikael did a change to the PnP search call log, so you have now a kind of an additional parameter that allows you to export the search log in raw data format. And again, a ton of PRs to look into and merge for the next one. Next one, by the way, is latest September 9th. So we do guarantee that the release will be there before the community call, which is always on the second Tuesday of the month, which implies that September 9th is our deadline for the release. Most likely it will be a couple of days before that one, but the 9th definitely will be there for you. In the modernization space, we did have some updates. So just to kind of give some background, modernization means the modernization scanner, which I will talk about later today in the call. It also means our transformation technology that allows you to take pages, classic wiki pages, web pages, publishing pages, and transform them into modern client-side pages. And in that area, we had several improvements. So the upcoming release will have better support for on-premises. So you might ask, what's that on-premises thing there? And well, what we do allow you is to actually read your on-premises publishing portal pages. So let's assume you have a SharePoint 2013 portal running in your on-premises farm, and you want to move that to the cloud. One way to do so is create a new communication site in the cloud, use our tech, and directly create modern pages in your communication site in the cloud. So you directly go from on-prem to SharePoint Online in the communication site. And that's really convenient, easy, and very powerful. And there's some improvements in that area, mainly done by Paul Bullock. But also Dunham has been working in this area as well nowadays. So some good work there. And then there's some smaller improvements, like we still transformed closed web parts. Makes no sense. So logging improvements, additional layout mapping capabilities, etc. So a lot of good small things there, which will go out on September 9th. Then the scanner, I'm not going to talk too much about it because I have a topic coming up later in the call, but we are at version 2.5, and 2.6 will have some workflow and InfoPath improvements. One last thing, maybe the graph below. So the bottom graph shows a number of pages being transformed. Now, what I want to show you guys is that you see the color at the July and August bars. You see there's different colors appearing. So these are already transformations coming from on-prem. So we're already seeing about 10% of our transformation traffic coming from on-prem directly to SharePoint Online. So if you're interested in that area, if you have like classic portals that you want to modernize, give it a try. We have an issue list which is actively being monitored. You can reach out to us for feedback, for share your experiences. If you have done something you want to show it in this call, like within a couple of weeks or a couple of months, reach out to us. We'll give you a spot in this call so you can do like a nice demo of what you did. So I think that's it, Fessa.
Cool. Excellent. Thank you, Bert. So let's move on to the demos. So now people want to see actual demos and actual environments, and we have the honor of having April to start up the demos today. April, I saw you on the call. Hopefully you're still there.
Yep.
Awesome. Awesome. And let's cross the fingers. You can actually start sharing your screen, and let's hope that that works fine as well.
All right. Hopefully, let me know if you can see the screen there.
That was fast. That was insanely fast.
Nice.
Teams is much better than Skype. This is really good.
Maybe the demo gods are in my favor today. Let's see.
Yeah, let's see. Thanks, okay. April. Just take it away.
All right. So just real quick, for those who don't know me, first of all, thank you for having me on the call. Really appreciate it. My name's April Dunham. I'm a Microsoft MVP in Power Apps and Flow. I own a business called ThriveFast based out here in Tulsa, Oklahoma. If you want to reach out to me, you can find me on Twitter at April Dunham, and I do have a blog called the SharePointSiren.com. I blog a lot about SharePoint, Power Apps, and Flow related topics. All right, so enough of that. Let's move on. So I want to show actually two things today. The first is my planner task card view formatting sample that I just submitted. So I'm just going to dive right into demo here on that. So I'm going to start with my inspiration. So this is actually a need for a client. They use SharePoint task list, but they also use Planner still. So they want to kind of have the task list match what they see in Planner. So my inspiration here is this Planner task board here. So I wanted the list to be formatted in these boxes, kind of like Planner. I needed to be able to pull in the assigned to's profile picture. Ideally have the date formatted like that, and then utilize these icons for if it's pending, and have a strike through if it's completed. So I took this as my inspiration, and let's just dive back over to SharePoint then. And this is my SharePoint list. So this is just a custom list, and we've created some fields here. So title to hold the task title. We have a due date field, which as you see also has some column formatting on it to show red if it's overdue. We have just an effort field, people picker that's assigned to, and a choice status field, and a due date. So that's all needed, that what we need from a requirement standpoint for the SharePoint list for this to work. So if I switch over to my views here, I have a Kanban style view with the formatting applied. So this is what we're going to get when we apply this view sample. So as you can see, it looks similar-ish to the planner list that we looked at there. So we have our status at the very top. We have the title there, and we're using the Office UI fabric to pull in some icons. So we have the calendar icon to show the due date. We have that same icon that you may have noticed back on Planner to show that this is a pending and progressed item. And then we have a little warning sign also if it's overdue, all pulling from the Office UI fabric. We're also utilizing the built-in functionality here. So if I need to edit this task and change its status, for example, I can click the little pencil, and that'll open up our view form here, and I can just change the status quickly to, let's say, this one's completed. And when I do, the formatting takes over, strikes that item through for me to let me know that it's completed. So some tips here on exactly some key elements of what this is doing. So this is actually based on another sample already in there in the GitHub, and it's the profile card sample. So I kind of just took that and customized it to my needs to make it look more like Planner. So some features with the view formatting that I'm using is the custom row action. So that's what enables you to do things like the default click and the delete functionality that you saw. I'm using the Office UI fabric to get the custom icons and theme colors. And so from a code perspective, from the JSON, I'm dynamically setting those icons. So you might have noticed that based on status, different icons were showing. So this is how you can do that within the view formatting with a simple if statement. So you can pass in the name of your status column here, and you can check if it's in progress, then display this icon. If it's completed, display this icon. And if it's delayed, display this icon. The other thing I'm doing from a styling perspective is if it is complete, I am doing that strike through. So that's another if statement that we can use in the text decoration object in the CSS. So if the status is complete, then we want to do a line through. So I want to jump over quickly to the Office UI fabric and show how I was utilizing those icons in my sample here. So as you can see, like I have a check mark to show that this one's completed as well. So if you're not using the Office UI fabric for this, this is definitely your friend. So you can just go to developer.microsoft.com/fabric. And if you go to styles here, you'll see iconography. So that's where I'm getting those icons from. And if you scroll down to the bottom, you see all the icons. You can search the icons. And then if you hover over it, you'll get the name of the icon that you'll use in your view formatting sample. A quick tip, so I used Planner as inspiration for this. So for example, I knew I wanted this little circle icon to show if my status was pending. Well, if I didn't know what this was or what to search for, I could use my browser tools, and I could right click and inspect that. And I can actually see what icon that they're using here without having to search through the UI fabric and figure out what that name is. So I can see here that it's MS icon circle half full. So I can use that in my JSON for my view formatting, and I know that that's what's being used. So just quick tip for that there. And those are the major pieces to the code here. Another quick tip that I wanted to show, especially for those that are just getting started with view formatting and haven't used it extensively yet. So this is the GitHub repo. So if you want to find my sample out here, that's the Planner inspired task card. So if I click on that, it lists out all the details. So here are the required fields that are needed for the setup. But if I want to copy the code and use it in my own environment, you go to the JSON file. When you do that by default, you'll notice that it has all of these numbers in it. So if I wanted to use this, if I were to copy it from here, those numbers would be copied over as well. So if you click on raw here, it takes you into a non-formatted raw view. So if you copy and paste that, you don't have to worry about those numbers being carried over when you try to implement this in your environment. Okay. So that is my view formatting. It also has default, so if delete options. So if I want to delete that, I can click delete, and it will remove that task for me from my task list. And the cool thing about this is it is responsive. So if I were to embed this on a page, for example, So here's my SharePoint homepage. It would natively respond and shrink down as needed. So as you can see, it's a one column layout here instead. So works pretty well. And the next one I want to show you quickly is my Twitter formatting demo. So I'm actually, for this, using Flow. I have a flow that I run to monitor for and run it through sentiment analysis for negative tweets, and I have it written out to a SharePoint list. And this is a flow template that you can use and get started with pretty easily. So with this, I wanted it to kind of match the look and feel of Twitter. So that's what I did here. And again, I just started from another example on here that kind of had some row formatting already going on. And all I did was put in some things like a formatted date to show how Twitter formats their date with the month name and the day. And I used, again, some Office UI Fabric icons to show like the retweet count. So that's kind of like the most similar icon I could find out there to the retweet icon. And then we have this little share icon. So if you were to click that, it would actually go to the person's tweet in Twitter so that you could look at it and you could share it. And I also made their name a hyperlink here. So if you were to click that, it would take you straight to that person's Twitter profile. So pretty cool. Again, we're pulling in their Twitter profile image. So the flow is doing all the hard work for us. It's finding the tweet. It's writing all of this out to the list for us with the URL for their image. And we're just applying styling over that to make it look kind of like Twitter. So same thing for this. It is responsive. So if we go back to that home page, you might have noticed that it's on the right-hand side here. I have the flow tweets, and it is shrinking down and scaling depending on the page that you have it on. So that was that. And before I move on, I wanted to share some tips with you guys about lessons learned with this. So I started with view formatting a few months ago, and I've did about 4 different samples. So some quick tips here. Always start with an existing sample if possible. There's no need to reinvent the wheel. That's kind of the path of least resistance here. You don't have to worry about writing the JSON from scratch. So usually there's an example. So like take my planner task card example. There was already an example out there that had that in the square boxes that I knew I needed. So just start with that and tweak it to your needs. Another lesson learned, a tip, is make one change at a time and make sure that change works before moving on. So back in that planner task card example, I knew that I wanted to add those icons. So maybe I'd go into the sample, add the if statement for those icons, make sure it works before I try to drastically change, the styling or where stuff is structured within the JSON object. So that'll save you a lot of headaches if you just make one change at a time and test it. Next tip, Office UI Fabric is your friend. So you can get all of the icons you need, even utilize some of their CSS classes in your JSON, so you don't have to write your own custom styles and anything like that, or go out and find all these icons. And then another one is consider offloading complex formulas to a calculated field. So if you need to do something like in my Twitter example here, I'll actually jump back to that real quick. I'm utilizing that to do the format. So this is just a basic date field with the time in SharePoint. So I'm actually using a calculated column to make it show the month name spelled out like that and the date. So if we go here to our list settings real quick, you'll see I have a tweet formatted date calculated column. So rather than having to worry about, well, what's the formula to do that, for view formatting, just let SharePoint do the hard work. If you're already using SharePoint, you probably already know the calculated column formula to do that. Just take in your field name and then format it with the month and the day, and then reference that calculated column in your view formatting instead. So that does all the hard work for you. And lastly, before I leave you guys, if you built something cool, share it. This SharePoint community truly is awesome. If you don't know GitHub at all and you're scared, like, how do I contribute this when I don't know anything about GitHub? There's people out there to help you. I know David Warner, Chris Kent, any of those guys, they're super helpful and eager to help and friendly. There's nothing to be scared about. They can help get you started to share your samples because we can all benefit for it. So that's all I had.
Excellent. Thank you, April. Really great demo, really cool looking stuff. And one thing what I wanted to kind of reinforce here is also the design pattern which April used here related on to Twitter. Because now that would then mean that the person who's accessing, for example, the front page of the portal, you do not need to have access on Twitter. What if it's not a Twitter? What if it's your, let's say, CRM system, or what if it's your business system in on-premises? You can use Flow to replicate the relevant data to a SharePoint list, and then you can use the JSON definitions to make it look really cool, right?
Yep, exactly. Great.
So
thank you.
No code, and thank you, April, on that one.
Yep.
It's a no-code solution, except obviously we talked about this one a few times. The JSON does look almost code as well. So is it code or is it not code? It's almost like PowerShell. PowerShell was the evil scam of Microsoft learning IT pros to develop. Now, are we doing the same with JSON and the non-devs? We'll see. But thank you, April. Really great demo. Awesome stuff.
Thanks.
We kind of stick on the theme of column and view formatting, which is good. These column and view formatting actually pages in the official developer documentation are the most viewed pages in the whole documentation. So we're getting like 50,000 views within a month, if I remember correctly, from many tens of thousands of people actually checking them out. But next in the line is Chris Kent, and Chris kind of want to explain slightly overlapping topic what April went through as well, but I'll let Chris to do the demo, and there he is. A lot of slides, at least, I can see.
I just didn't make a special slides for this one. Can you guys hear me?
Cool.
Then, I suppose?
Yep,
Okay.
all good. We can see the screen. We can hear you fine, so take it away.
All right, great job, April. It was awesome. April's done several samples for us, and we're hoping for even more. And that's what we're going to talk about. So I'm Chris Kent. There's all my stuff. I'm on the PMP Core team, and I'm an Office Development MVP. And one of the things I do as part of PnP is help maintain this repo right here. So this is our spdev list formatting, our extremely catchy name for a repo here. And this is where we have all our SharePoint list formatting samples. So everything April just showed off is here and available for you, open source and free. You can copy it and start using it right away. And to make that even easier, we're trying to address that with a brand new kind of documentation site here. So if I click on this, you'll see you put some work in here to try and make this even friendlier and easier to use, right? So the idea here is you shouldn't have to be a GitHub guru or a hardcore dev to use some of these things. So if you take a look here, we've got notes about how things are organized, guide to getting started here. We'll walk you through how you can use those samples directly from GitHub. Very similar to what April showed with the cutting and the pasting. Put it in there if you want to know where you do for column formats, right, or specialize for view formats. All of that's in here. And so let's say I've got, my classic Warrior Horses site, and I've got my things list here, and I've got all these pretty column formats, but I've got one more I want to do, right? So I want to find one that applies to a multi-select person field, right? What's the easiest way to do that? Well, you could go and you could click around and through the repo itself, or you can come over here and look at some of our new groupings listings. So now we've got this idea of samples by column type, right? So I can come down here, I can see where all these column types are used and all the various samples across the board. So I come down to multi-person. Oh, there's several samples here. So I can click directly on the multi-person face file. It's going to take me right to that sample. As April mentioned, every sample here, we tried really hard to standardize this. So everyone has a README, right? It'll tell you what it does, kind of key things it's trying to show off. Usually a picture, even an animated GIF, some extra details, but always has this view requirements, right? So it'll tell you what columns you're going to need in order to replicate this one. In this case, we just need a single, multi-select person field, right? Some additional details about some notes or anything else might be on here. Every once in a while, some of these samples include things like site scripts or provisioning templates, right, for the more advanced ones, and they'll give you the details on how to use those here. But I can go directly here, just like the document shows. And you can do the raw trick, just like April shows. You want to do that fancy Control-A, all right, or Command-A, or you can also just grab it here. And I'm going to copy it like that. And if we go back, almost every column type, with the exclusion of location and currency, provide this column settings, format this column, and you can just paste it right here. All right, and we hit save, and there we go. Now, if you are working with a currency or a location column, you can do that by going to List Settings. and click it on the field, and there'll be an option there. Again, details on that are all in the repo, documentation. Now, if you've got something like a date field, right, and you go to format this column, you might be a little thrown off by this, right? This is a nice design mode template, and you can use all that. But if you want to use one of our samples, all you have to do is hit this advanced mode link down here, and then you can paste it directly. One thing to note is where it says this formatting JSON will be discarded, that's only if you switch back to design mode. So don't worry, your formatting JSON will be just fine. Just hit save and you're good to go. All right, so let's take a look back at our exciting site here and a couple of things we've got available to you. All right, so we click back in here. So additional groupings, right? We've got things like by operator. So if you're looking specifically to do things like the join operator and you want to see all the samples that demonstrate that, check that out. Or if you want to find out how do I use, the @me special placeholder token, we've got all those listed here. Or if you're interested in some of those row actions like April showed off, right? So I want to know how she did that cool thing with the delete, right? Or I want to execute a flow and some of the things I can do there. Check out these samples this way. We also have some kind of loose categories, right? So you can kind of see like, hey, I want to do a cool tiles thing. I want to do something with SVG. All that's available here. And say you just watched a really cool demo by someone like, April, right? And you want to see like, I don't quite remember what the name of that sample was. You can come here and we've listed everything by author, right? So you can come in here and find what they actually put together. And maybe you're stuck on SharePoint 2019. We actually have pretty good support for a lot of samples for 2019, and you can find all those here. All right, and finally, now you're super inspired. You love all this, and you want to contribute, you want to give back, right? So I absolutely love this blog by Hugo that was mentioned earlier, right? That kind of goes through the whole process across the board, how you be a PnP contributor through GitHub and all this other stuff. And this is a fantastic read. Check it out. For column formatting and view formatting, it's actually a little simpler. And so what we've done is we've put together kind of a unique contribution guide that's specific to these samples here. So if you come through here to kind of walk you through how do you submit an issue, that is a contribution. We appreciate issues and suggestions, right? How do I just provide a minor update? We had the other day someone noticed that a parenthesis was missing at the end of a formula. Fun fact, you can actually leave those out. But, for completeness, they wanted to put that and they made an issue, and that's a fantastic way to do that. But even better is to go one step forward, which is to make the correction right in the repo and submit that as a pull request. If you're uncomfortable with doing that, which I understand pull request, that sounds pretty elaborate. It really just means here's the thing I made, make it in the thing. That's really good definition. Read this instead of what I just said. Okay, so all of that's available to you. I'd like you to check it all out. We've got tons of samples right now. We've got 21 different sample authors. We've got 30 plus contributors across the repo. We've got 80 plus samples for both column and view formatting. So there's a lot of things happening here. We're getting new samples every week, illustrating all these things. The documents, like Vesa mentioned, are being hit a lot. We're doing our best to try and make those better and up to date. That's a key area you contribute as well, right? If you notice, hey, we actually support the location column, but we didn't say that. That was something that someone pointed out this week. We went ahead and updated the docs for that. We're trying to keep those up to date and a little better by linking directly to these pages, right, when you're looking at those operators and everything else. All right. That's all I got on this.
Excellent, Chris. Thank you. The documentation side, this is kind of it's not official documentation, it's a documentation through GitHub, but this gives us the opportunity of then surfacing and promoting the samples with what people do more efficiently. So really, really great job on that one. Now, we will also, and we're looking into making potentially a template in the provisioning service. So you might have actually heard about the provisioning SharePoint which is going to be, by the way, renamed and revamped and all of that stuff. And we're having an ongoing discussions on having a specific template dedicated to column and view formatting. So basically with two clicks of a finger, 2 clicks of a mouse click, you're able to then provision a set of samples directly to dedicated site collection within your tenant. That definitely would help on helping demonstrating these capabilities and showing what's possible with column and view formatting. More on all of that later. But thank you, Chris. Really great stuff. Really great stuff. Thank you for that one. Now, Let's move to another slightly different topic. So we move from a UI fancy stuff to slightly more different level on understanding what are the extensibility being used in your current tenant. So this is really around the scanning of the existing tenant and what has been deployed, which is really important when especially when you're transforming from classic experiences to the modern experiences, not just in the UI, but also from InfoPath and workflow perspective. Now, Bert is going to actually walk this through. And most likely after that, we will have some time for Q&A, unless I'm mistaken. Right, Bert?
Yeah, it should be quite a short topic. Just checking, can you guys see the screen?
Yep, we can see the screen.
All right. So before we start, how do we get here? How do we get to our modernization scanner? So there is this ak.ms/svpnp-modernization scanner gets you over here to this page. Now, the scanner has been around for a while, and it is a tool that you can use to understand your classic SharePoint usage. Because if you want to modernize SharePoint, whether that be using modern list and libraries, whether that's group connecting your site collections, modernizing classic pages into modern pages, you do want to understand where you start. What's the body of work that you have to do? What are things which are compatible, which are things are not compatible, etc. So the scanner will give you a ton of information about all these topics. Now, in the recent version, 2.5, we introduced for the first time scanning for classic workflow and InfoPath, which will be the topic of today's call. All right, so go to this page, you get information about how to use the scanner, how to get started. The scanner is a download. When you click here, you download an executable, which you can then run as a scan. There's also a detailed user guide. So if you're interested in knowing all the details, for example, I've just kind of moved the page here to the output. Like the scanner generates a ton of files. Depending on options that you choose, you get 10 or more files, CSV files, Excel files. These are all documented in all details that you need in this particular page. So go from the detailed user guide, you go over here and you get all the details that you want about the scanner. The scanner is also open source, by the way, it's in the SPDEF modernization repository. So if you encounter an issue, if you have a question, just use our issue list to create an issue or ask a question. Now, with that being said, let's have a quick look at the scan. When you download the scanner, you get the exe. The scanner is Microsoft signed, so just checking like we do verify this, so it goes through our internal validation process, so it's safe to run. And when you run it, you get the UI. Takes a bit of time to load. You can run it using command line or using UI. And the UI option is the preferred one because it's way easier than specifying like 10 or 15 command line arguments. Before you can run a scan, you need to authenticate to SharePoint. Since you typically scan all your sites, all your data, you need to have an approach that allows you to access all data. App only is the easiest approach, so either Azure App Only or classic ACS, but also username and password does work. You pick the one that you prefer. Now for this demo, since I'm not going to run the scanner, I'm just going to enter some bogus data like this. You can pick the scope. Do I want to scan a complete tenant? Do I want to scan like a particular site collection or a set of site collections? Just pick the option here, like specify CSV file or a set of site collections, or in this case, let's take my complete tenant. Next. This is the important page. Let me zoom in a little bit. Here you can choose for what you want to scan. As mentioned in the beginning, the scanner has several options nowadays, and it keeps on expanding. And you obviously can scan for everything. If you want to do that, you get all the data that we can give you about your environment, about your customizations, about your pages, about your list and libraries, etc. Now, that's a ton of data, and depending on your tenant, that might take a ton of time. So if you're just interested in, for example, InfoPath, you can just check this option. You only get InfoPath. So pick what you need. Let's pick InfoPath here. Click Next, and then you can just hit Start Scan, and it will start to run. Keep this scan running on a machine that you don't need to shut down, because it might take some time. It runs on your machine. So I recommend always folks to have a VM somewhere and run it over there, or run it on a machine that can stay up in your environment. Now, the output of the scan is a set of CSV files and Excel reports, depending on the options that you've chosen. So let's have a look at those. So I opened up two new ones, which is InfoPath and Workflow. So let's take InfoPath real quick. Kind of shows you what kind of InfoPath usage do you have. Like, is this InfoPath in a custom form? So if you have customized the list editing experience for InfoPath, it will be custom form. If you have a form library, it will be defined as a form library. These are candidates to be replaced with Power Apps. And that's why we have the scan actually to give you information about where is InfoPath being used, what are potential places for you to look into Power Apps development to kind of move away from InfoPath. Yep, that's about it for this one. It gives you some additional data like list and library, item count, kind of helping you assess how important that particular InfoPath form is. In the next version, there will be a bit more data on usage. So we try to give you as much data about usage as possible so that you can understand what is really used, which InfoPath forms are really being used actively in my tenant versus what has been developed like 10 years ago and no one is looking at anymore. Only migrate, only look at things which are really relevant for your business and skip all the other things. That's what we want you to do, and we'll get you more data to do so. Let's go to Workflow. So Workflow is also a new component in the 2.5 scanner version. And it will give you, let me remove this filter here. So you get like this type of report showing you workflow versions, whether the workflow is attached to a content type, list or site, whether it has subscriptions, enabled, yes, no, and then names of workflows. So the top ones are all filters. So it allows you to say like, okay, let's see where am I using SharePoint 2010 workflow? Okay. You can filter down, data gets filtered down. You see this, a subset of my site collections. This is my demo tenant. Is having 2010 workflows, then you can further filter down, like give me all the list workflows, 2010 list workflows. Then it kind of filters down again. So you get the point. I think it's a way for you to, again, drill down in your workflow data and understand what you have as a preparation for a transformation using a flow. Going forward, what we'll do for the next version is we'll actually open the workflow and look inside and say like, and look like what workflow actions are being used. And then we'll map those to what is available in Flow. So you'll get like what we call like an upgradability score. So we'll tell you like this workflow, yeah, it's really, you can actually upgrade this using Flow. You can use Flow instead. Everything that the workflow is using can be done using Flow. Or this one is like a 50% upgradable. So it will be maybe quite hard to move it to Flow at this point in time. Maybe in the future there's an option. I think that's it's important for you to get that data, to get the understanding of your environment. Where are you today? What do you have? Well, if you start thinking about Flow and Power Apps development in your organization. And I think that sums it up, Vesa. I think we have some time for Q&A. If there's questions on this, feel free to ask. Use the issue list as well, or ping me directly if really needed. It's an evolving thing, so more features will be added. If you have specific requirements around workflow or InfoPath, like if you're today doing this exercise already, and you have ideas, thoughts, things that you want to include, just let us know as well. I'm more than happy to get additional things built into the scanner if that can be helpful for the community.
Excellent. The question already, like, on-premises are coming up, the questions all the time. So
yeah, so there's a pending ask. So today the scanner only runs in SharePoint Online, but I have a backlog item to indeed enable the scan as well to work in on-premises environments. It shouldn't be like a massive amount of effort, but since vacation time was there, it didn't happen yet. But that's definitely on the roadmap.
Any other question on the George question? So typically, Microsoft employees' emails are first name, last name at Microsoft.com. They work quite consistently on that as well.
Oh yeah.
George is volunteering for doing a live community demo here. Any other questions? Yeah, so on the Hugo's comments related on being jealous and get to work on those things. So all of this stuff actually, everything what even Bert is doing is generating from the work he did actually outside of business hours, which is interesting. So nowadays, Bert, you actually get to do this for a living as well. But it's really a lot of the stuff what we've done with the PMP tooling and open source, it definitely most of the time is done outside of business hours. So
yeah, there's a particular need and try to fix something, and then something small grows into something bigger, and eventually, it might even end up in a product somehow.
Yeah,
that's how it goes.
True. That is true. Always depends on the demand and interest of the community, what things are. Kind of related on this one, if there's no other questions or pending things, we can close a few minutes early, obviously, as well. But actually, let me be polite and move to the Q&A slide, because I have this here running. So I will just share my screen again. Now, we're looking into a few things which we are closely looking into, let's say, improving. One of the things which we are absolutely closely looking into from a engineering perspective, being more closely part of the product or as part of that experience, is definitely the migration tooling. Because like I said, when we started this call earlier, really the modernization and modern experience is a really big investment area for us. And we want to make sure that the customers can more easily transform their existing experiences to modern, because the modern is where the future is. The classic theme sites and classic purpose sites definitely is not the future. Now, the second thing is really around the provisioning. We're also looking into making the provisioning service, which can use to provision good-looking lookbook sites to any tenant in the world, more integrated part of the SharePoint Online, and also that the experience is more polished and more easily usable. There's multiple options, but we're looking right now into that one. Including also then support and all of that as part of that discussion. Any other points, updates? One thing maybe to note, Chris did an awesome job on the documentation side of the house. There is an ongoing discussions related on doing the same potentially for other GitHub repositories as well. So don't do that without telling us, so that there's no overlapping work done by multiple people. But I think it is probably worthwhile. We talked about this one with Hugo Bernier a while back, that it would be great to have a better sample catalog for web parts and extensions and libraries and all of that. And I think definitely an area where we want to spend open source tooling and time from our side as well, because then that promotes the samples which community is actually contributing, and it promotes the active community members to give them more additional visibility as part of the let's say compensation on the time what they're investing on this side. So really cool. Now there's one good question related on enable SBO ComSite. So the comification, if we call it comification, not comification, themification, comification, and that the rollout was suspended for actually, I don't know exactly what's the reasons for that one. So it was partly already getting rolled out to enable the communication side in the root side of the tenant, but then it was suspended. I do not have exact details why, but we're definitely looking into releasing that out. Do you have details, Bert, on that?
We do have an alternative now. We do have the option.
Oh, true. That is true.
Actually take an existing communication site and get the root site, which is probably even more powerful than upgrading your existing root site. So just if you have a communication site, switch it over and you're good to go.
It's the swap site, something like that. SBO swap.
Yeah,
I can't remember what it is. Invoke SBO swap. I can't remember what it is, but yeah, so that's a good point. And it might be actually that we will stop. Are we going to stop doing the enable SBO ComSite? Probably not, because there might be customers who have investments on that area already, and they don't want to swap. They want to use the existing site. So definitely coming at some point. The .NET Core support for CSOM in time for Ignite question. I can't confirm or deny that, but I can say that we are looking into, with the current estimates, we should be available in Ignite timeframe, but I can't promise that. That's the really the challenge. There is a really unfortunate, let's say, dependencies around that code base on the build processes and build automation, what we have behind of the SharePoint Online, which is actually further delaying the thing. Getting the basic assembly is compiled as a .NET standard, that's the easy part. That can be done by pretty much anybody. Fixing our build processes or the implications of that change to our build processes, that's the complex part, which people are right now working on. So, but it is getting attention. And trust me, every single time we have the leadership team meetings around our dev platform, I'm asking that from the persons who are owning that. So it is moving. It's definitely moving. Good. Thank you, by the way, Dunham, for the Invoke SPO site swap PowerShell command lines. Any idea, can we get a ALM site design, site script, taxonomy endpoints available via Graph? From Gautam. Not sure. I can't. Obviously, in the long run, everything should be in Graph, but will that be in a Graph? We'll see. We'll see. I can't promise anything on that. What's the current best eyes for customers regarding content type hub? Avoided this buffer. Yeah, so on the document side of the house, there will be announcements. No, I'm not saying that there will be announcements related on content type hub in the Ignite or not, but it is evolving all the time. There's a lot of investments on that side of the house, so there will be definitely announcements on that. See, I'm an ex-consultant. I can. That's the one core skill as a consultant. I can talk, and then you realize that he didn't actually say anything, but it felt like that I was saying that. That got me to be a principal consultant. But anyway, I think that's it for the ad hoc questions, and we'll close up a few minutes early. So thank you everybody for joining. Thank you everybody for your questions. Please let's stay in touch in the social media, in the open source initiatives, and give us feedback. And in a week from now, we have the SharePoint Framework Community Call, and 2 weeks from now, we will have then the next call in this series. So thank you very much for joining. Thank you, April, Chris, and Bert for the great demos as well. Have a great rest of the day and upcoming weekend. Bye-bye.